We come off the heels of all the beautiful chapters of the return of Bnei Yisrael, the Brit Chadashah, the new covenant. God and Bnei Yisrael will be together, but that's in the future. Chapter 34, Adavar Asher Hayal Yirmiyahu Meit Adonai, Unevuchadnezzar Melech Bavel, V'chol Mechelo, V'chol Mamlachot Eretz, Memshelet Yado, V'chol Amim Nilchamim Al Yerushalayim, V'al Kol Areh Halemor. Right? The beast is crouching at the door. These are the words that came to Yirmiyahu when Nebuchadnezzar and all of his armies and all of his allies, all of his nations, all of the people of the world were waging war against Jerusalem and all of its town. It's a little bit of an exaggeration, perhaps, in the way that it's described. Who knows? Maybe it was everybody was together doing this. That's unclear to us. But what we know for sure is that the Jews are, as they are, we are in trouble. We are in not the best situation. And this is what God says. The same message to Tzidkiyahu. Go and tell him, Nebuchadnezzar is coming. I have given him the city, and he will burn it down. Ufihu et picha yidaber uvavel tavo. You won't escape. You will be captured. You will be handed over him. You will see the king of Babylon face to face and speak to him in person, and you will be brought to Babylon. Just think of those words. When we talk about ayin ba'ayin, God and Bnei Israel, they will return to Israel, ayin ba'ayin, the way Moshe sees God, the way Moshe speaks to God. And here we're telling that the leader of the Jewish people, the king, is going to be taken away in that way, in that intimacy, that closeness all the way to Bavel. But just note, Tzidkiyahu, you will not die in the conquest. B'shalom tamut u'chemisrefot avotecha mlachim harishonim asher hayu lavnecha kein yisrefu lach v'hoy adon yispedu lach kol davar ani dabarti nu ma'adonai. You will die a peaceful death. Right? You will have a nice burial. Incense will be burned, just like happened in the past. They will lament you. That's what God says. And then Yirmiyahu continues. And Yirmiyahu spoke the following words in Yerushalayim. And this is now when the army of Bavel is waging war against Jerusalem and all the towns. Lachish and Azekah and all the other fortified towns. Those are the only ones that are basically left. And if you want to look, we don't have the time today, but look, you can Google search the Lachish letters, these letters that were found that describe this period, archaeological finds. I don't remember exactly when it was, but have descriptions of what was going on to the Jews, the Israelites, the people of Yehuda at this time. Continuing verse 8. Now God comes to Yirmiyahu and speaks to him after Tzidkiyahu had made a covenant to all the people in Jerusalem. And what did he do? Sounds like a great man, right? He korei lahem dror. He set them free. It's Yovel, right? It's the time that all the slaves go free. Beautiful thing. God wants that to be done. There's even a Talmud Yerushalmi that talks about that. This was the command given by God to Moshe and Aaron when he was going. Moshe early on, when he was going to tell Pharaoh to free the slaves. And there's a little bit of the error. There's a little bit of a strange, ambiguous notion in a pasuk in early Shemot. And Talmud Yerushalmi says that God said to Moshe, "Go and speak to Bnei Yisrael and to Paro Melech Mitzrayim." What does it say, Bnei Yisrael? Tell Bnei Yisrael to release their slaves. You want to ask Pharaoh to release you, the Jews, as slaves? Well, you Jews need to release your own slaves. And so here we see it. Tzidkiyahu, what a great guy, is releasing the slaves. Now, why is he doing it? L'shalach ish, we're in verse 9. Et abdovet shiftachato ivri v'avriyach chofshim levilti avad bam bihudi achinu ish. So, right, why is he doing it? So nice. He doesn't want one Jew to enslave his other Jew. Vayishmu kol aserim v'chol asher bo b'avrit l'shalach ish tabdovish et shiftachato chofshim levilti avad bam od. And everybody listens. What a great moment. They set their male sleeves, their female sleeves. They're not sleeves free. Everybody can go and no longer has to do the hard labor and listen. They are now free men. But what happens? Soon afterwards, they turn around. And the people who they freed, they bring them back into slavery, which is reminiscent in many ways of the general idea of this generation or of these people. For a moment, they return to God, they're ready to listen, and then very quickly they go back to idolatry. It brings me back to the words all the way back of Eliyahu at Hara Carmel when he says, how long are you going to go back and forth, jumping back and forth? One day you're with God, and the next day you're with Baal, you're with idolatry. One day you're listening to Judaism, you're listening to God, you're releasing your slaves as you're supposed to do, and the next day, what are you doing? You're bringing them back in. Now, what was seemingly Tzidkiyahu here is, I don't think he's just being a great righteous man, although you could say that's part of it, but presumably the reason why he wants to release the slaves is very simple. I don't want them cleaning your cupboards. I want them with a sword and a shield and a spear, or whatever it might be, defending the city and making sure the Babylonians overtake us. So it may not have been for the correct exact reasons why somebody's supposed to go free, but what we see very quickly is the people just don't continue to do it. They release them, but very quickly, unfortunately, they take them back. Continuing in Pasuk Yud Bet, verse 12, Vayhi dvar Adonai Yirmiyahu meit Adonai Elimelech. Ko amar Adonai Yisrael. Anochi karati vrit avotechem b'yom motzi otam meretz mitzrayim b'beit avadim lem. I made a covenant with your ancestors when I brought them out of Egypt, out of the house of slavery, the house of bondage. Obviously, God is responding to this recent development. Below he too at Oznam. And what was supposed to happen the 7th year? You're supposed to let your slaves go free. We see in Parshat Mishpatim, right after the exodus from Egypt, after Yetziat Mitzrayim. That's the first Elah HaMishpatim, all about the Hebrew slave. He's supposed to go free in the year of Shemitah, and of course the ceremony where he can stay, but then he has to be released at Yovel. How wonderful! You turned about after all the generations where they didn't listen to me, they didn't free their slaves. You did what was right. You released your slaves. You actually listened to the covenant right here next to the house that bears my name. However, vatashuvu vatechalalu et shmi v'tashivu ish et abdo v'ish shivchato asher shilachtem chofshim lenafsham v'tichbeshu otam liot lachem la'abadim v'lishvachot. But then you turned your back. You profaned my name. You brought back the men and the women that you have given their freedom and forced them to be slaves again. And just think about the psyche of these slaves. They were slaves. Finally, some hope. They've been given their freedom. Then 2 days later, they're snatched up again, brought back, enslaved once again. And therefore, verse 17, Lachin Kol Amar Adonai, Atem lo shmatem elai lekrodor ish lachiv ish l're'eu, hineni krorei lachem dror nu'um Adonai, el acherev el adever vel arav v'natati etchem l'za'ava l'chol mamlachot ha'aretz. You didn't listen to me. You didn't proclaim. You did not release your brother, your neighbor, and therefore I am releasing you to the sword, to the pestilence, to the plague, to the famine, all of the horrors of all the kingdoms everywhere. And I will make those who violated my covenant, who did not fulfill the terms of the covenant that they made, like the calf that they cut in two so as to pass between the halves. And of course, if you think here, what is this? So going back all the way to Avram, the Brit Bein Abitarim, one way of showing a covenant was you cut the animals in half to you, half to me. We pass through. We're two parts of the same whole. And that's what was supposed to be done. That was the covenant between me and you, God says. And that's not what you did. Not listen to me. You rebelled against me. You didn't listen to what God had wanted to give Abraham, and having freedom and allowing us to continue. And thus, you've broken my covenant. Sarei Yehuda, we're in verse 19. V'sarei Yushalayim hasarisim v'kohanim v'chol ha'amaretz ha'ovrim ben bitrei ha'egel. The officers of Yehuda, of Yerushalayim, the priests, the people of the land who pass between the halves of these calves. Right? So the ones who, right, you're supposed to be doing these things. V'natati otam biyad oivehem v'yad mivakshei nafsham You are going to be handed over to the enemies who seek to kill you. Your carcasses will become food for the birds of the sky and the beasts of the earth. And just think back, right here, we're talking about their carcasses becoming food to the birds, if you look up, and to the beasts of the earth. And just in the last chapter, talked about how great the return was going to be, and how numerous Bnei Yisrael was going to be, and how their sheep is going to be everywhere, and they're going to be like the stars in the sky and the sands of the sea. Going back all the way to the beauty of the original promises between God and Avram. In this chapter, we've gone back from the beauty, from the hope of the future redemption, where we will once again be so numerous, to no. If you look up, you look down, you don't see the many stars, you don't see the sands on the sea, on the beach. What you see is the vultures and the maggots and what other animals it's going to be that's going to eat up your carcasses. And Tzidkiyahu will be given over as well. This is my command. They're going to attack it. They will capture it. They will burn it down. These towns will be made once again desolate. There will be no habitation whatsoever in these cities. So yes, we had a number of chapters of beauties, of hope for the future, of the incredible thing that's going to happen when God finally comes back. And the Jewish people, as it said, we're going to be, I will be a God for them. They will be a nation to me. But now we've moved back. Unfortunately, the people demonstrate that they're not with God. Their jubilee, their drawer is short-lived. It's duplicitous. It's horrific. It's a terrible, terrible look. And it's identified with the idea of the Brit Bein B'tarim, the calf that's cut into halves. And we go back, of course, to the days of Avraham. Avraham is the one who this happens with. But the calf is also problematic. At times they're golden calves. So which right to the golden calf in the desert, the golden calves of Yeravam, which one are they going to be? Are they going to be the calves like Avram? And for a moment they demonstrate that they are, when it's split in half, when they let their sleeves go free. But that doesn't last. It doesn't last all too long. And they show that they're much more similar to the golden calves. They're much more similar to the calves of Yeravam, not in allegiance with God, but rather continuing down the wrong path, which will release them straight into the horrific destruction.